A mine-clearing mission has ended. Only one explorer was left after the explosion. Don't worry, they are just androids. A company named God's Hand created them to serve various industries. On this day, the company welcomed two important guests who arrived in a drone-transported car, showcasing their wealth. Dr. DeBow warmly received the couple. The wife, Chow Wei, is the world's richest woman with billions in assets, and her husband, Bonnie, is her kept lover. On the way to the exhibition hall, the doctor encountered an android who proactively asked for a cigarette. When the doctor refused, the android changed his request to candy, but the doctor just rudely drove him away. There's no need to be polite to androids. They are created to be used as objects. They can not only clean up nuclear waste without taking up outdoor space, but also serve as cafe waiters without accepting tips. After the tour, their meeting got down to business. It all started because they saw a six-legged dachshund at the exclusive club they frequently visit, which was a masterpiece of the company. The other party flaunted its million-dollar price tag, causing the couple to lose face. They could let other things slide, but losing to others in spending money was unacceptable, so the couple resolutely came to commission the doctor to create a winged Pegasus. They wanted to ride the Pegasus back to the club to regain their prestige, regardless of the cost. However, after hearing this idea, the doctor claimed to have something even better and returned with a miniature elephant. But this was not a baby elephant, it was a full-grown elephant named Napoleon. However, this was clearly still no match for Bonnie's Pegasus. But what if Napoleon could read and write? A beautifully written piece of calligraphy instantly captured Jo Wei's heart. In her 85 years, she had never seen such an endearing little animal. Ignoring Bonnie's persistent request for a Pegasus, she immediately decided to take the little elephant. Considering its uniqueness and the price of $3.35 million, Bonnie still chose to agree. At the same time, he didn't forget to tell the doctor that if he couldn't create a Pegasus, it was okay to just say so. This hit the doctor's sore spot. Can't create it? Are you kidding? Forget about a Pegasus. I could even make this table fly if you wanted. But what would be the point? In his life, he had created so many things, all just for the amusement of the wealthy. They possess so much wealth, yet they don't invest in curing cancer, alleviating poverty, or benefiting humanity, but instead indulge excessively like misers. Of course, the above is just a personal stance. In business, he would still serve the two wholeheartedly. On his way out, Chow Wei saw Jerry downstairs, and from his lip movements, it seemed like he was asking Chow Wei for help. The doctor, however, insisted that he must have been saying, "Kill me," because this batch of androids had already lost their effectiveness and, according to the plan, needed to be melted down within 2 hours. But Chow Wei couldn't bear to let this Jerry, whom he had met once, die in front of him. He quickly ran downstairs. Jerry got his candy as he wished, but his expression remained sad. The doctor, however, thought he was seeing things. Androids are not supposed to have abstract thinking. But Jerry clearly expressed that he was very sad because he lost his job and thus lost his cigarettes and candy. As the doctor explained, it turned out that he was the only android who survived a previous mine-clearing mission and was then repurposed by the company to work as a cleaner, like a robotic vacuum. Under his instructions, Jerry cooperatively started walking, and its eagerness to work successfully moved Joe, who immediately asked the doctor to name a price, as he wanted to take Jerry home to prevent it from being melted down into dog food. But the doctor said it had already been bought by a breeding farm, and even if you are a millionaire, it wouldn't be possible. Moreover, androids can't feel pain at all. What you see is just based on your subjective assumptions. But Joe was unwilling to accept that. Since it likes candy, it must be able to feel happiness. He didn't care. He was determined to take it away. Bonnie couldn't argue with him, and could only propose a compromise. If buying isn't an option, then renting is possible, so even if Joe regrets it one day, there would still be room for maneuver. The doctor could only agree, after all. It was a deal with no risk of loss. Naturally, Joe gained the right to use Jerry for a year. He treated Jerry with an abundance of candy and even remembered to help it wipe its face. The husband, who was playing with the little elephant, saw this scene and became very jealous, claiming that androids have no emotions and wouldn't appreciate everything Joe did. But Jerry kept repeating that it was very sad. Joe, feeling sorry for it, took it to the guest room. "It's okay, you have a home now." The husband called it to come out and play, but it wouldn't go. Its mind entirely focused on Jerry. To be honest, he envied Jerry's simplicity, being happy just by walking and eating candy. As for himself, despite having endless wealth, he still often felt empty. He suddenly realized that money meant nothing to Jerry, so did it mean anything to him? A sincere and simple life is the true essence of happiness. He decided to consider Jerry as the last thing he bought, except for a pair of shoes and travel. Everything else could wait. The next morning, A drowsy Bonnie was startled by Jerry lying beside her, and she strongly demanded that Joe immediately get rid of Jerry. However, Joe stated that if Jerry was sent away, he would break up with Bonnie. Bonnie felt he was joking, just for this thing. The inevitable result of Joe forcibly keeping it would be to face the hand of God in court, and the cost of this would be immeasurable. Why not think carefully? Do you want yourself or Jerry? When it comes to calculations, Joe is much better than Bonnie. No matter how high the litigation costs, it's better than giving half of his property to Bonnie. Only children make choices. Joe chooses to have it all. However, the lawyer informed him that the law explicitly prohibits the sale of bionic humans, unless Joe can prove that the company's treatment of them is inhumane or malicious. Joe also thought about contacting the Animal Cruelty Prevention Association. At this point, the lawyer suddenly noticed that Jerry was listening to music, and even more astonishingly, it had learned a song. After hearing this, the lawyer immediately took on the case, as Jerry could no longer be regarded as a conventional bionic human. The lawsuit immediately caused a huge stir in the media. Nearly 121 people were following the case. The lawsuit began as scheduled, with the judge and jury having at least 70 years of courtroom experience to ensure the case's fairness and justice. Joe's demand was simple. He wanted the Hand of God company to stop harming Jerry's body, especially prohibiting the company from killing him. The plaintiff's lawyer stepped forward first, delivering a passionate and impassioned speech to prove Jerry's real existence. The defendant's lawyer, a doctor, did not deny the objective existence of Jerry, but argued that he could not truly be called a human. At most, he could only be considered a tool, no different from the media robots filming outside. The company's executives also provided a video as evidence showing the scene of the demining operation at that time. The facts proved that the bionic man does not fear death. The judge was about to immediately rule in favor of the company, but the plaintiff's lawyer raised an objection at this moment. Upon closely examining the video, one can notice something strange. Jerry, after witnessing the destruction of a teammate, deviated from the original route on his own accord. Moreover, he took advantage of another teammate's inattention to disrupt their original path with his hand, ultimately causing them to be blown to pieces. The judge began to take Jerry's identity seriously, arranging for him to step forward and take an oath. Afterward, under the lawyer's guidance, he started singing a song and even lied under the temptation of a cigarette. Everything was proving that Jerry was not an ordinary android. He had his own preferences and also feared death. With so much evidence, can it not prove that his thoughts are no different from those of a human? If such a person were to be turned into dog food, where is the justice? Where is the morality? Everything was laid bare, and the news of Joe's victory was reported by major media outlets. From then on, all androids were granted social identities and enjoyed the same benefits as humans. Retired androids took to the streets, sharing in the social resources. But Joe had no intention of taking responsibility for them. In his eyes, there was only Jerry. End of episode 3. Joe's wish was fulfilled, and Jerry also received an endless supply of cigarettes and candy. But upon closer thought, was all of this really his deliberate doing? The truth behind it is enough to send chills down one's spine. Jerry had Joe to help him, but the people in episode 4 were deeply trapped in desolation, unnoticed by anyone. Please join me in the world of episode 4, Space Wanderer. In the vast universe, the spaceship Gulag quietly floated in space, a muffled sound breaking the silence. Clearly, this spaceship was not ordinary. Stranger than the ship full of plants were the various deformed people here. Everyone ignored the repeated sounds of impact. Life was already so hard, they couldn't even be deprived of the freedom to seek death. Except for Baker, who ordered a few people to dispose of the body, and surprisingly, his words worked. Although Baker was not the captain, everyone on the ship regarded his words as law. In the long-term oppressive environment, people's mental states seemed quite abnormal. Coupled with their strange appearances, it didn't seem out of place at all. Sam, who had 2 heads, came to complain. The teammate who was supposed to be on duty with him never showed up, so he had to work double shifts every time. If he ran into him, he would definitely spit on him twice. But Baker said, "You won't have the chance." The one who just died was Sam's teammate. Sam was also used to it. This was already the 6th self-inflicted death this month. Instead, the plant he almost knocked over just now caught more of his attention. Apparently, they were much more important than his own life. At least surviving is better than being dead. One day they will endure until victory appears. But Baker held a pessimistic view. There are 6 colonies in the galaxy, and they have been to each more than once, only to be driven away every time. Earth, though seemingly within reach, is a homeland they can never return to, simply because they are refugees exiled by Earth. In the span of 37 years, 2/3 of the crew have chosen to end their own lives. In the silent and boundless deep space, having no hope is more terrifying than death. But Baker was different from the others. He chose to survive tenaciously from the beginning, which is why people held him in high regard. There's no choice. No one wants to end up like this, but those who develop symptoms of random congenital chromosomal mutations can only face such a fate. Sam was still incessantly trying to make his presence known, but no one wanted to listen to his nonsense. It's okay, at least he has another head to talk to. The inseparable trio might be the most optimistic people on this spaceship, but Beck only found them noisy. He wasn't interested in the trio's ambiguous relationship with each other, he just wanted to stare blankly at the starry sea. But a sudden piece of news interrupted his thoughts. The spaceship Gulag detected an Earth-originating ship approaching, but it wasn't on any reported itinerary, and it will dock in 8 hours. But Beck didn't care at all. I'm just an ordinary passenger like everyone else. What does this have to do with me? Yet he softened and agreed to accompany Captain Moni to take a look when the time comes. On the entire ship, perhaps only the beautiful Annie could offer Beck some solace. He had been exiled here since he was 16, and now he was over 30. Beck confided in her that the so-called resource depletion and the exile of certain vulnerable groups were all lies, and it was simply because Earthlings feared them. But kind-hearted Annie believed that their fellow humans wouldn't be so cruel. Thinking about these meaningless things was pointless. It was better to savor the warmth of the moment. However, Beck's request to turn on the light made the other person extremely uncomfortable. And it wasn't unreasonable. After all, how could there be normal people on this spaceship? Moni's message broke the awkwardness between the two. The Earth spaceship was about to dock, and everyone on board urgently needed Beck to take charge, but Beck's call received no response, and instead directly entered the cabin. The newcomer was named Karen, and she claimed to have brought good news for everyone. But everyone now had only one request, clamoring to go home. Without waiting for Karen to respond, Beck took her to the church stage. Although it was simple, it was quite decent. The abundant plants could provide oxygen for everyone on the ship. As for why they hadn't been supplied with new air filters, that was a question for this friend who had come all the way from Earth. It was clear that Karen's purpose here was not so simple. She was here to carry out a mission on behalf of every member of the Intercouncil of the Supreme Court of Earth Central. 37 years had passed, and Earthlings had repented, but Sam didn't believe this nonsense at all. With no other choice, Karen had to lift her clothes to prove that she was just like them. The current situation on Earth is gradually worsening, simply because the vast majority of people are showing symptoms of genetic mutation. It lasted for a full 11 years, like a nightmare from which one could never awaken. Afterwards, the virus mutated, becoming more infectious and harder to cure. No one was spared, and thus it was impossible to replicate the measures of isolation and expulsion. Fortunately, later on, a Hungarian doctor provided an antiviral serum that could effectively stop the spread of the virus on Earth. However, humans on Earth could no longer produce the bioenzyme in the antiviral serum, but the Wanderers could. Everyone cheered with joy. They could finally play a role, finally no longer suffer from discrimination, and finally embark on the long-awaited journey home. But Beck was full of caution. It was the humans who had willingly abandoned them, leaving everyone to fend for themselves in space, never caring about their survival. Now they come running back demanding to draw their blood. Is this right? He would never cooperate with humans for such a reason, in such a manner. But the others didn't think the same way. One crew member, on the verge of a breakdown, was particularly emotional. He wanted to go home, even if it meant crashing the spaceship. In the process of stopping him, Moni unfortunately met with an accident, and Gulag lost this dedicated captain forever. And this position could only be taken over by Annie. Karen still refused to give up, publicly declaring that as long as everyone was willing to help, she would agree to let Gulag land on Earth and send everyone home. Of course, if no one was willing to provide blood, Earth would send other envoys to another ship. Everyone was eager to move, as they had been drifting in space for too long, but Baker didn't believe that Earthlings would keep their promise at all. How could a single envoy have such great power? Sam, however, was willing to believe what Karen said, and immediately stirred everyone's emotions, proclaiming his desire to return to Earth. Baker was extremely angry. How do you still not understand? We no longer have a home. From the moment we were exiled, Earth no longer belonged to us. It was all just a lie. He was about to throw Karen out, but Sam thought he was crazy. If you dare to let her go, I dare to break off with you. Stop basking in the pleasure of being revered and self-satisfied. You just can't let go of your status and position on the ship. Beck was at a loss for words, and could only seek Annie's opinion, but even Annie felt that Karen's words were not unfounded. With no support, Beck had no choice but to forcibly send Karen away. In a moment of crisis, Sam used the cane that had accompanied him for years to personally end the life of this close friend. No one stopped caring anymore. They were willing to do anything to go home. The medical team arrived at Gulag shortly after and extensively drew blood from the crew members. No one found it inappropriate. Instead, the joy of soon returning home was everywhere. The rescue ship will arrive in 6 hours. Sam couldn't feel happy. He wished Beck could be there to witness this historic moment together. Thinking too much is pointless, as they are about to leave this place soon anyway. The plants, usually well cared for, were also picked freely to be used as decorations. Yes, the lively and cheerful trio planned to hold a 3-person wedding before leaving Gulag. Sam acted as the priest for them, witnessing their love and hoping they could find happiness. However, the so-called happiness could only exist forever in imagination. The spaceship led by Karen entered Gulag, but those who disembarked were not rescue team members, but another group of infected individuals. The journey of Gulag will never end. With another dull thud, Sam followed Baker. At least he won't be lonely on the way, as there's another head accompanying him. On the captain's symbolic sofa, Annie repeated what Baker had once said.